My mother, if you know anything about my mother Roberta, this was most definitely her passion. Not only was it her passion, but she made sure it was all of ours. We had, she wasn't cooking dinner, she was digging holes in sand and walking up and down streets, looking at houses and things along those lines. There wasn't anything that could stop her from doing anything like that, and if she had a will to do something, she found a way to get it done, basically. She did start originally, their first little office, so to speak, was in the lobby of City Hall, in the closet.
The janitor's closet.
The janitor's closet, that's right. So I said, jump in. She really Ed Eaton was the city manager, and he should be credited too here with the Historical Society, because he really gave her, I guess he just didn't want to do it. All right, Roberta, no problem, Roberta, sure, Roberta. And they formed a great friendship and a great love for the city and Ed's history with the Historical Society and with the love for the history of Long Beach is a very big deal and should be noted. I'll talk about some of the events that she dragged us to, that we had to participate in. There were things that she did back in the day to draw attention. One was always talking about the boardwalk and how the boardwalk was built, and the whole story about the elephants, true, not true, that's a myth or a legend, whatever. It's kind of a fun story to talk about either way. But there were days that they all dressed up and were walking up and down with their parasols and dresses and bicycle, the pedal bike, and doing the suffragettes on the boardwalk. Anything to draw attention, they would do. They did Nautica '97, and if any of you remember that, it's kind of comical. Nautica, the brand. We had to run around to every store that had this white T-shirt, so that everybody who was on the boat tour. And Nautica was a trip around. Was supposed to be a trip around the Barrier Island via boat, like a boat regatta, and it was a great time. Those are some of the kinds of events that she did. House tours were probably her most favorite to do, and plaquing houses and going to look and talk about the history of each house. But another huge passion of hers was the schools, was teaching the younger grades, the 3rd and 4th, and that becoming the curriculum, as part of their curriculum in the local schools, which I think is really wonderful for anybody like myself who has grown up here and has remained here to understand and know the history. So the history is her passion. It still is. For whatever it's worth. You can talk about how, she reaches out or found, like we were talking about Senator Reynolds' family, like grandsons, and she would track it down. There's books in my house that she's researched from libraries from the whole Eastern Seaboard all the way to the West Coast. If it mentions Long Beach anywhere, I've got that book. Even if it's a one-liner. That's why I said I've got stuff for the archives. But she just was. That was what it was. That's what she was about. There were other people that were involved at that time, whether it be in Alexandra, Bob Carroll, Joan Whitbread. There were many families here, and I think that was another project that they really loved. And it's funny because it pops up every now and then.
Michael Alpern too. I asked him.
Right,
he's in Norway right now, so
wow.
Yeah, but I go back and I think about there were a lot of people that were involved originally, and like any organization, they come and go. But that said, she was always a mainstay, and there's nothing that made her happier than was to talk about the city and its history and its roots. So it's great that it's lasted this long. I'd love to see it go for another 100 years.
I moved to Long Beach in September 1994. I saw a notice of a meeting of the Long Beach Historical and Preservation Society in a library newsletter a month later. Seemed like a nice way to learn more about the community. As they say, the rest is history. That meeting was in a crowded small room off City Hall's lobby. Subsequent meetings were held in the lobby itself or people's homes. The idea of buying a property seemed totally unsupportable to me, but I went with the flow. We viewed other properties such as a bank and synagogue and considered rental of the old 5 and Dime store. Thanks to Gene Sundergaard and Karen O'Donnell, the house was purchased in 1997 with their broker fees waived. Jerry Fleischman handled the contract and closing at no charge. Soon after, Harvey Wiesenberg arranged for a line item in the New York State budget that allocated $10,000 for a grant through the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Officers of the organization waited for the money to arrive, and waited. They didn't know that grants require an application process. My experience working at NYU had taught me that. So I worked with Jean Sundergaard. Using the engineer's report from the purchase, she got estimates to repair the foundation, to add a beam flowing north-south under the living room, which is what allows us all to sit here now, so it doesn't collapse, and replace a wooden beam that was close to the border, the boiler metal beam. I wrote the proposal and the final reporting. In subsequent years, the Society's leaders secured 2 similar grants through efforts of Wiesenberg and of Jean Skelos. Liz Allahan and I teamed up to work on the grants to create our first master plan for the house and for replacing of the living room windows. Again, I wrote the request and final reporting after she found the people to carry them out. In 1998, I was tasked by Alexandra Karafinas with chairing an ad hoc committee to produce a new set of bylaws. The original set of bylaws had been created in 1981. We met weekly for 5 months to get the job done. In 2002, I again chaired a group to incorporate some amendments into the document. A few years after that, then President Carol Gerasi set the wheels in motion for us to be listed on the New York State and from there the Federal Register of Historic Places. She arranged for us to be visited by a state official, and I wrote the actual application. In 2007, we were awarded a federal CAP grant, that is a Conservation Assessment Program. The program paid for Conservator to do an assessment of how our collections are maintained, and an architect with a specialization in building preservation to perform an assessment of our 2 buildings, that is the house and the garage. Carol Gerasi and I worked together on this project. This provided not only useful guidance for us, but helped pave the way for future grants. Because since then, in grant applications, we're asked if we've ever had a CAP assessment. Meanwhile, back in 1982, the organization was awarded a provisional charter by the New York State Board of Regents. In 2000, we somehow learned the charter had been revoked. Why? Apparently, a piece of mail from the State Education Department was returned addressee unknown, although it turned out it had the correct address. Well, that led to a visit from David Palmquist, who was head of the charter program. He spent a day with us and concluded the provisional charter was not in order, but rather a permanent one. There was, of course, paperwork to be done that resulted in our creating our collections management policy, among other things. In 2008, having recently retired as administrator at NYU, I became treasurer, serving for 6 years. In 2010, after completing the Cornell Crawford Extension Master Gardening Program, as did Karen Adamo, I began working in our garden, initially with Karen. We built upon the previous intermittent efforts of Liz Allahan, Ron Paganini, Carol Gerasi, and Monique O'Connor. Grant has since then contributed his skills operating a chainsaw. Yeah. In fact, Margaret Smith talks about the first time she came to work with us in the garden, when we had this huge, awful willow tree out back, and she sees this crazy guy hanging from one branch of the chainsaw. What is this lunatic? But over time, a dedicated crew of 9 has developed, transforming our property into one featuring a landscape of plantings appropriate to an early 20th century garden. And I'll talk a little bit more about what came before that in Liz Allahan's comments. So plantings appropriate to an early 20th century garden and that do well in our seaside location. Also, it's an extension of our exhibit space with artifacts from Long Beach's history. All plant material and hardscape are labeled. The ever-evolving garden's goal is for it to be an educational space as well as aesthetically pleasing. Over the years, I wrote articles for our newsletter and mounted an exhibit on the Nassau Hotel and presented some programs. I pulled my husband Lester in to build the wall in the downstairs bathroom that separated from the pantry. Prior to that, there was a sheer lace curtain area with the pantry door that didn't close there.
Right.
He restored the chandelier above you that was in pieces in the garage. He installed the burglar alarm and fire alarm system and returned electricity to the garage, among other things. In recent years, I've been drawn into working with our archives committee, which we've learned recently is more properly called a collections committee. Archives are just the paper-based components of it. Betty Bella worked for many years, mainly single-handedly, to pull together the various objects and paper-based items into its basic organization. She was succeeded by Angela McCauley, who set in motion a multi-year project to digitize a large portion of the archives for posting on Preservica, a database of Long Island historical collections. Joanne Deli now chairs this committee of 4. She's moving us ever forward, continuing the digitizing process, including with a new grant from the Long Island, LILREC, which is the Long Island Library Resources Council, to digitize our approximately 75 oral histories that are on cassette and VHS tape, and most of those oral histories were taken by Roberta. That project, in the 80s, that project will start next month, we've just been notified, and be made available to the public for posting on New York Heritage, which is a database that I believe is maintained by New York State, I think the New York State Library, I'm not sure. Joanne is also computerizing our collection inventory. My particular role in that committee has been in rehousing items in the collection for their better preservation. To this end, I secured grants last year for conservator to visit and produce a report on how we maintain objects, and for one to purchase supplies for this purpose. Last week, I submitted a new request to fund more supplies. The society has evolved and grown over the past 30 years. Volunteers have come and gone, each leaving a significant mark. While I've done what I can, without folks to take on leadership, to fundraise, to edit newsletters, stuff mailings, prepare refreshments, run teas, make repairs, clean toilets, and reach out to involve more people, the society would not have flourished. Today I'm delighted there are so many people involved that I don't know many of them. Going to that first meeting nearly 30 years ago, getting emotional. That's learning more than I could have expected about my new community and all the introduced me to many interesting people with a variety of talents.
Very well done.
Do you want to read Liz's did you do that or no? You want to read Liz's?
All right, Liz, don't worry, Liz is not so long.
I didn't even think of Liz.
Liz Allenhand was an early member who now lives in Nantucket. But she was here last week. She had to go back yesterday, actually, otherwise she would have been here. And she said that she joined the organization somewhere between 98 and 1999 after she took the adult education course that Roberta Fiore taught. For several years, Roberta, through the adult education...
I forgot about that too.
Yeah, through the school district's adult education program, she taught a course on the history of Long Beach.
I have those binders for you also.
Okay.
And then after that, she started coming to the newly purchased house, did some repair and cleaning projects, and then she worked with me on those early grants. She also started working in the garden, and what she has a recollection of the garden, you may also. I have to admit, until I started working in it, I have no recollection, virtually no recollection of it. But she talked about how the garden was overgrown with vegetation, and also the fact that there was no lawn in the garden. The garden, you could see remnants of it being used as a vegetable garden. And Roberta kept saying that we had, Liz thinks she saw it also, that we actually had a drawn plan for a victory garden for the backyard. Nobody knows what's happened to this plan. But Liz feels that what she saw was the remnants of that victim garden. There was some broken down cold frames were actually made with some kind of iron rails. She was involved in helping to create a lawn in this garden, and moved a few of the older shrubs, like the lilac we have, where the driveway was in with a mass of overgrown things at the back of the backyard. She said that there was those iguanas that had invaded down leaders on the front east corner of the house. And I think she said it was pulled out, but they had to use a truck to pull it out. I'm not sure if that's accurate, if I'm reading it accurately. The wisteria on the side was totally out of control. She also said
antique roses.
Right, we have some pink and red roses that she thinks are 50 to possibly 75 years old. When she talked about the pergola,
Yeah.
Working with Ron Paganini, who was very active in the organization for a number of years, they built this pergola, and they designed this pergola, she said, as a combination. She said the front of it is sort of a formal kind of Italianate look, but the back of it slopes down, which she said is what you do with a grape arbor. And because there was a grapevine growing at the back of the house. She said the bricks came from Long Beach streets. I had thought that they came from when they repaved Laurel to Boulevard and moved in further, the macadam further in the street. But she thinks it was that Eddie Eaton had them in a warehouse someplace.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
And he would have
He collected.
collections
We
of that kind.
had quite a collection. You see, a lot of it's in the back, a number of pieces in the backyard now. There are a number of pieces that are still in the basement. There are a couple of pieces in the exhibit room from him. So she talks about that. She said the idea in designing the pergola was to keep a focal point for the yard, whether it was for relaxation or whether it would be activities would create a viewpoint, and also because pergolas were so emblematic of gardens in the early 20th century, no matter what the style house and what the location is.
Okay, I got involved in about 1993. I went on a house tour, and I saw Jean Sundergaard, and I met Doreen, I think her last name was Maza.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, well, these are some younger women that are involved. So let me find out what it's about, because I'm really into antiques and old homes, and of course had seen some of the gorgeous, and being in real estate, I had gone into one or two of the mini mansions, and I was just fascinated by them. And so I joined and became on the board, and Jean and I started the fundraising committee. She went to her uncle, Bob Carroll, and said, we need to make some money. We want to buy a building. Because as you heard, we were meeting in all these people's homes and the janitor's closet, and they had a lot of artifacts and papers, archival materials that they had no room for. You know, they had it in people's homes as well. So her uncle said, well, do a crafts fair on the boardwalk.
Her uncle is Bob Carroll, who was the director of recreation
Right.
at the time.
Right, for many years.
Right.
So we said, okay, what do we do? Well, they weren't always so helpful, because we figured they didn't want us to be more successful than their fairs, but we managed to go from about 40 vendors to, at one point, I think we had 180 vendors. So we managed to get a down payment together, and then looked at some homes and settled on this one, obviously because it's so original. And the owners didn't do too much, they didn't, modernize it. So we were thrilled. And then since then, the crafts fair has helped pay for the mortgage and repairs. At one time, we had to redo the entire red tile roof at a cost of $90,000. Now, I don't remember, I was gonna say,
Refinance the building.
I couldn't remember, but I thought that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so it's a labor of love for me and for everybody I know that's been involved. I was president after Roberta for 6 years, and then I just had my past presidency was 8 years because of 2 years of COVID. And it was tough after COVID. You all know it was very tough. We had lost a lot of money. We couldn't have the crafts fairs. Okay. We couldn't have our events. And so we've been struggling and trying to find new ways, grants and such, to make money. And we've come back really strong, which I think is just remarkable with many people's help and work. But the fundraising started out with everything, the house tours, the teas, the yard sales, and the chats, yeah, everything. So
T-shirts, anything you could get your hands on.
T-shirts, the gift shop, and we've had some great gift shop managers, and so it's really been a wonderful time for me, and I'm in love with this house. I used to feel like it was my second home, because I had to run here all the time when something was wrong. and find someone to help take care of it. So it was a big responsibility, but now it's been turned over. Other people have the responsibility, Jeannie, Barbara, and the board, and it's a labor of love, and we just appreciate the volunteers and all the help, and it's really wonderful.
You know, it's funny, when Jeannie sent an email out to prospective speakers, it said, you know, just be prepared to chat about your involvement in the history of the museum. And involvement over here, I thought the key word for tonight was volunteering. And now I'm a little torn, is it Roberta or volunteering? I mean, Roberta, God bless her. What a fantastic lady. And
mentor.
my involvement over here really starts with her. You know, you become a member. I think I'm a typical path. You hear about the place pre-building. You hear about house tours. You say, oh, $5 discount for members? Oh, member. Plus, you're a little motivated to volunteer some money to become a member. I don't know if you guys are on board, but we could try something fun. When I say volunteer, and then I say because volunteering, you can respond, is fun. We'll try it one time, and if it doesn't fly, you know. Because volunteering
Is fun.
well done, thank you. Anyway, so you become a member, you go to events, you go to house tours, and listen, nothing at all against 5 other docents on an annual house tour, but you soon realize I gotta get on Roberta's bus. I don't care. I don't care if it's the 6 a.m. bus. Put me on Roberta's bus. And Roberta has a way of presenting history and telling a story. It's so infectious, and I always wanted that. So somewhere around, I don't know, I did a couple house tours, loved it, joined as a member. There was a real rainy year, I think it was 2002, because I have some of the programs. And that one, all the printer's ink is completely failed, like smeared into each other. So the house tours always end up here. And they have refreshments in the dining room. And I walk in the dining room, pouring rain outside, and I look at this beautiful parquet floor in the dining room, soaking wet. Because there's a missing pane of glass in the street side window. And I elbowed Roberta and I said, would you like to fix that? And she lit up and she said, I would love to fix that. And I said, okay.
You're
Now,
hired.
Phyllis, I don't know if you remember,
The rest is history.
I think you and Liz were here in the dining room. And one of you or both of you said, do you have vintage glass? And I said,
It was Liz, I'm sure.
I said, gee, I don't know. And then, I must have been Liz, said, oh, we have a stash. And she disappears into the basement and comes up with a piece of glass, wrong size, no big deal, can be cut. But it was vintage glass, which obviously it's not like modern day float glass, which is perfect optically. It's wavy, so everything outside is not a straight line. So I said, oh, is it okay if I take this? Great. I didn't have a key, I wasn't a trustee or anything. So I took the glass, came back with a stepladder, put the window back in, all good. But now the
Said you're
hook,
hired.
the hook has been set.
They
Because
reeled you in.
one broken window
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
leads to a missing window, stained glass window in the upstairs bathroom. So that got done. But I volunteered because
It's fun.
well done. And of course, that window led to the downstairs window, Phyllis mentioned a curtain, which was replaced by a wall and a door. Well, the window in the downstairs bathroom, which is not original, was just a regular single glazed, double hung window, and I figured, stained glass for our modest guests. And, you know, it's funny because one thing leads to another. You attend events, it doesn't matter what it is. Franks and Friendship in the backyard.
Say another one.
Neil Sterer's Famous People
he's
of
another
Long
one.
Beach.
Another one.
Roberta's
Yeah.
Third Thursday History Chats. And you talk to people. And you talk to Phyllis, Garden Committee Chair, and she talks about some tree that's completely overwhelming the garage. Got that. Front yard, sycamore has trouble. Got that. Got some hardscape, needs to be planted in the ground in the backyard. Got that. So it doesn't matter what committee you're talking to, a restoration, garden committee, fundraising. Oh, we have boxes of posters and books and t-shirts and hats. We gotta get them to the boardwalk Saturday morning.
And the tent.
Got
Yeah.
that. Oh, by the way, you gotta take it down on Sunday.
What time will you be back?
Gotta do the
Yeah.
reverse.
And then for a
The-
while,
the
remember,
yard
we
sale
had
tables.
a cart on the boardwalk that somebody built for us that we could take to the different concerts to sell things.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that
Yeah.
wagon.
But,
Push cart
you know,
on the
it's
boardwalk.
just, it evolves, and, again, all good. I mean, no one is pressuring you. It's just really, you're volunteering because volunteering
It's fun.
It's
Fun.
fun.
All right.
But Grant, you should tell them about what you did with the upstairs bathroom, the many things you
The
did with the
floor,
upstairs
The
the-
garage.
bathroom.
Well,
And then you have 6 minutes.
I think, all right, I'll talk fast. I think we're jumping ahead.
Okay.
In anticipation of the garages, not the building. Oh, wait a minute. In anticipation of the building's 100th anniversary, 1909 building, we were having some celebrations for that centennial of the building. The kitchen gets a partial redo. Some craftsman shelves, fix the walls. If you've ever looked down in the butler's pantry, there is a piece of disgusting carpeting. Filthy. Well, believe it or not, same carpeting was in the kitchen. I couldn't live with that if people were going to walk through for the centennial of the buildings. Okay, tile, whatever. That was a quickie, and I wish I had a picture of Roberta after painting in the kitchen. There was more paint on Roberta than there was on the cabinets or the walls, but she loved it. I mean, we spent many an hour in this building. Garage is going to be 100. That gets a restoration. I guess I was full of gas because I said, you know, that bathroom upstairs really, really gross. So the following 2 years, over that winter, I guess that was 14 into 15, that got restored, and wow, I'm exhausted. Yes.
But it is
And
fun.
it has been
Okay.
fun.
We have to
and
stop, right?
Listen, the place, we wouldn't be here without volunteering, because volunteering,
It's
fun.
I moved to Long Beach 50 years ago this week. So it's like an anniversary. I don't know exactly what day.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. At that time, there was no Long Beach Historical Society. It hadn't been invented yet. Okay. I had a brand new baby. I was renting an apartment. I started to work at the hospital as a nurse and fell in love with Long Beach, even through the 70s. And before the rebuild, I sensed that somehow this community was going to build up again. And mainly because every time there was a fire in one of these slum places, they couldn't save the building, it just burned to the ground. But if it was someone's home, it was out in a flash. And I said, somebody's looking out, for Long Beach. So I bought a house, and I'm still in that house and still loving it. So anyway, when my son was 6, that's when Long Beach Historical Society started. I didn't know about it, but one day when I was in Goody's Candy Store, and anybody who missed out on Goody's Candy Store missed out on a lot. It was a wonderful place to be.
The Morrisons,
Yeah.
they were the owners.
All right, so anyway, I love, on the calendar they had, it was the early years of the Historical Society. They had the calendars with the photos in them.
Mm-hmm.
Fell in love with the photos. and I
Mike
was like,
Alpern did.
Mike Alpern,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I started, like Greg, I started coming to events, and one of the early things that I went on before there was the museum building, there was a boat ride that went around
Mhm.
Adams. And when I was dating my future husband at that time, he had taken me out a few different places. I decided I was taking him on a date, and the boat ride was what I took him on. And so here I am. And like Grant says, you kind of get into doing stuff and getting involved with different things. I was on either chaired or was a member of a gazillion committees. There was planning, there was education, there was nominating committee, there was grants, there was the archives, I worked up there for a while, membership committee, exhibit room, strategic planning, and it's part of, like what you do, becomes part of your life, and I always refer to this and Long Beach as Hotel California. You can't leave.
Check in, but you could never leave.
That's the Bates,
Don't
that's
forget
Bates.
the murder mystery place.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
That's in the end.
Oh,
Okay, so anyway, I was, currently I'm the vice president, but I was president, I took over from Carol Gerasi, so, it's a little pain in my heart too, in 2013. And was president until Karen Adamo took her second turn at the reins in 2016, right? And what I want to do is bring you back to that time. And the first annual meeting that I had to give a report on the previous year was to report on 2013 and the beginning of 2014. Now, if everyone remembers, Sandy was the end of 2012. And the first few months of 2013, we didn't really have anything going on. So I'm going to read you the first president's report I had to give on that about 2013, the beginning of 14. All right, 2013 started off a little scary because post-Sandy there was a lot of uncertainty. I was new to the job. Would our members be able to support us because of their own post-Sandy struggles? We even had a hard time getting in contact. A lot of people still weren't back in their homes. We could not do some of our fundraising activities. Would we be able to offer the community any educational or fun activities? I'm happy to say we weathered the storm. And yes, pun intended. The city was supportive of all our local organizations and kick-started our recovery with a $2,500 grant. We were also in the final stages of receiving the grant through New York Rising, and thanks to the tenaciousness of Phyllis Ginsburg over there, they kept changing the rules every 2 days, and she just plodded through and got it done. Okay.
Yeah, that was from 2013 to 2019.
Yes, that's why you were tenacious. Okay. We've begun repairs and preventative measures on our windows and building. Some things have never changed. We're still working on windows.
There's a lot of them, that's why.
Yeah. The city also gave us a grant to update our outdated electronic equipment so that we could better maintain our archives and enhance our presentations. That equipment has since been, sadly, way outdated. Okay, although we couldn't have our tea party or house tours, we were honored to be the first craft fair event on the new boardwalk. We were blessed with great weather that weekend. We're becoming a little more well-known outside of Long Beach. We were the starting point of a walking tours for worldwide photos, another thank you to Phyllis. They toured different areas and photographed. Our website was given a national award for its design, thank you Karen Kahn. And just recently, we had the colorful cognac at our tea party. She's interviewed and photographed people on the red carpet, such as Simon Cowell, Deborah Messing, Star Jones, just to name a few. Inside Long Beach, we're still noticed. The community supported us by renewing memberships and coming to our events. There was Bobby Blues, Clementine Judge's art show, our holiday party, and our play was talked about for days. It was a play that would have been done the weekend of Sandy. Right, but we got it done in 2013 and they were well rehearsed. Okay. The city asked us to host the dedication of the restored brick streets. Again, good weather. And also to be docents on the Christmas bus tours to the West End. And we won't talk about the weather that night. Okay, Long Trunk presented us with a generous check. For those who don't know them, they were a small group of young people who have been raising money post-Sandy to donate to various groups or people in Long Beach. Our archives continue to grow as people share their stories with us. We have also received some interesting artifacts, a 1915 phone and a wood-burning stove. Our biggest restoration was our garage. And this, Roberta, whatever she did in this building, she was scrubbing beadboard in that garage, and Grant was like fixing everything that needed to be fixed in there. So Roberta and Grant did that garage.
My husband made the electricity.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Electrician.
Thanks, Les.
Okay. But we also had other small projects just as exciting, such as our call box in the kitchen. Actually, I learned that it was called, yes. Phyllis's husband Les restored it, and its actual name is an Annunciator. And he found, I don't remember the year of the newspaper he found inside it.
He found the inspection, it was inspected in August 1909, which means that it was brand new when the house was built, and you could tell from the wiring as he worked on it that it was installed as the house was being built. Otherwise, you couldn't have gotten the wiring into some of the places it was in.
Wow. Yeah. We also continue our mission of education, working with the high school with research projects, hosting young people such as Girl Scouts for a little bit of history and community. We participated in Career Day at the high school, and we hosted book signings by local authors of books that will tell or become part of our history. As you know, we were able to have our tea party this year, and we're in the process of getting house tours ready. We're also planning other talks and events over the summer, a book signing by Jeff Singer, a presentation about fishing by Bob Doxey, and another play is in the works. And then I introduced, like the board members and stuff. Now, that was not the only thing that went on during my tenure. One of the joyful things that happened was Roberta drove a portrait of Reynolds up from Florida, and it was upstairs in bad shape, and we were lucky enough to get a grant to have it restored, and it's in the hallway now. One of the sadder things and scary things was that we had a balloon mortgage which was coming due, and we would be responsible to pay the whole principal. If anyone doesn't know what a balloon mortgage is, you pay only the interest until the term is up, and then you have to pay the principal. We had two problems with that. One was some of the people on the board wanted to get another balloon mortgage, and the others wanted a term mortgage. Banks weren't giving the balloon mortgage anymore, so problem solved. However, we were fortunate enough that we were able to have that boardwalk fair when we did, and we survived. We got through that, just like we get through all the previous things that you've heard. And Long Beach Historical Society has always been strong and survived. And we're sustainable, and that's because we have wonderful members and wonderful volunteers. So thank you to everyone that's ever been involved in Hotel California.
So she said, I joined the Long Beach Historical Society in 1990. She attended 3 board meetings. She asked what the goal was. The answer was to open a museum and publish a sketchbook of historic homes. And at the time, the Recreation Department was running a craft fair. We had some t-shirts and sold them on a card table in the boardwalk. We used an original illustrated advertising brochure for Long Beach to do future t-shirt designs. Luke Hamlet, who, Long Beach family, silk screened the tees with a pastel rainbow bleed that exceeded any of the commercial executions she said now. Bob Carroll saw the opportunity for a 3rd craft fair on the boardwalk, encouraged the Historical Society to run it. And at the time, that was Kathy Peckham, who she was the secretary of the chamber, I believe, at that time. She said we learned how to organize and run our own fair that grew over 30 years. Karen and Jean ran it. The search for suitable property to become museum began. The city offered us the old McClellan's building for a song, but it was not what the board had in mind. Similarly, they were offered the Temple on Lindell and West Walnut for a very low price. Still not right, but when Karen Adamo, Alexandra Karapinas, and I met at the door of 226 West Penn, something magic happened. This was the house for our museum. It had vertical vinyl siding, was draped in old dirty plastic sheeting that covered the many French doors. The house did not appeal to the average buyer. With very little wall space, it was built more as a summer pavilion that could be open to the ocean air for entertaining. It was just what we wanted. As it turned out, this was one of the first of Senator Reynolds' estates of Long Beach, built in 1909. And she goes on, with our substantial down payment from the fairs, we were able to secure a loan from Roslyn Savings. Phyllis Ginsburg and I wrote up a list of fundraisers that would help pay the loan. Bob Scully donated his skills as a surveyor. Jerry Fleischman represented us as the attorney. We hired Jordan Ruse, anybody?
Yeah.
I don't know, an engineer who specialized in historic buildings. And then she went on about the steel beam being inserted under here. And Assemblyman Harvey Wiesenberg secured a $10,000 grant for that project. Bella Construction, who's still in business, won the bid and did the job. Neil Sturrer, who was also a realtor at the time, I believe, he said, if you build it, they will come. All right, perhaps not an original line, but one day Grant Guidell showed up. The first of his many projects to restore the building. Created a stained glass window in the first floor powder room, instrumental in dismantling the shower, etc. on the upstairs porcelain tub. Replaced the stained glass window in the bathroom. Completed bathroom has one of the favorite features, the saltwater tap, which is really an attraction.
Grant, why did you do all that, Grant?
Because I wanted to volunteer.
Because volunteering is fun. It was fun.
He once told me that he does it to keep himself from going crazy.
Busy, that's it. Okay, and now Jean just gave us a pitch with the cancellation of the craft fairs, but we're now having them again. Due to the construction of the super block and of COVID, our primary source of income is gone, but we're struggling to keep up with the with payments and everything. Now we're progressing in that area, which is a good thing, and that concludes Jean's report.